So part 2 is the social importance of emotion. So emotions are like a nonverbal language we use to carry out our social interactions. So emotional expression, catching someone's eyes across the room when you're sharing a joke, or sympathizing with somebody when they're experiencing something difficult. These are expressed in our faces, and these sorts of things are like the glue of bonding in society. In terms of relationships, the formation of intimate relationships, emotions relate to flirtation. They suggest interest in a person, the way a person holds their hands, their eyes, all of those things. They promote the formation of relationships, so that emotional connection that you feel, even the emotion related to, say, lust or attachment, all promote formation of relationships. And finally, they promote commitment. So your emotions signal your concern for another's well-being and allow you to set aside your own interest for that of another person. And we will talk more about oxytocin and vasopressin, hormones related to commitment and trust, which are really powerful. We're not going to go deep into those in this chapter. So oxytocin is the main attachment hormone we think about. It's produced in the hypothalamus and released into the brain and bloodstream. And we have some fascinating studies showing that oxytocin promotes commitment, pair bonding, the preference for one mate over desirable alternatives. And so this is in non-human species, but we also have evidence in human species. Oxytocin is associated with experiences and expressions of love, which can promote commitment in long-term relationships. So again, we're going to study this more closely in chapter 10. So touch contributes to the creation to oxytocin. So the physical touch it relates to oxytocin and promotes trust and intimacy in relationships. With deftly placed touch, we can encourage people or dissuade them from inappropriate behavior. When I see this, I often think of my brother shaking and shaking and shaking his legs in some sort of a, let's say, church or some sort of an event like that, and her just gently placing her hand on his legs as an indicator to calm him. So two settings in which this was investigated that are from your book that I'm highlighting for you. So Krauss et al. Examined touch in NBA teammates. They observed that each player touched his teammates for an average about 2 seconds during the game, so not much. And nevertheless, the teams whose players touched other players more early in the season played better later in the season. And this is regardless of how much money the players were making and regardless of their preseason expectations for the team. So this touch was related to sort of a bonding or a formation of a close team energy. The right kind of touch can prompt people to act in a collaborative fashion is the point of that. So that little tiny bit of touch can form kind of a bonding among team members or group members of any sort. And then Gugin in 2004 examined the touch of teachers with students. And you might be going, oh my gosh, teachers touching students. But remember, there's all kinds of positive touch. And so you can see here the kind of touch we're talking about. So teachers were randomly assigned to touch some students in a friendly fashion and to not touch others, just for a short time period. And one thing that was found is that students who were touched were much more likely to go to the chalkboard to solve a difficult problem teachers had assigned. So there was sort of a confidence, a boost, a secure base that was provided by that touch. And as I mentioned earlier, touch promotes oxytocin, which is that hormone of commitment and trust, which we'll talk about more in chapter 10, but this does give pause. You know, in so many situations, because of sexual predation, we have no touch policies in place. And I wonder what we think about this. So especially with young children, do no touch policies have a detriment that might be more significant than the risk, you know? Or with our older people, you know, older people living alone in assisted living, maybe they have no touch from anyone at all, and there's many prohibitions against that friendly touch that some people do. And so we can just wonder what the impact of that would be. We do find that because it's a nonverbal communication, you might wonder, can people interpret what these touch means, what touch means, what emotion is being expressed? And so people tend to be pretty good at it. You can see, almost 60% identified compassion as their first choice when they were given that kind of touch, and a smaller percentage identified it as their second choice. The dark green means that that was their second choice, and the light green means it was their first choice. Gratitude, they were able to interpret love, anger, fear, and disgust quite well in terms of the studies cited by your book, the Hertenstein study. And next, tune in for part 3, emotion and cognition.